Hey gamers, I am very much an anti-furry, and to prove this sentiment, I dug up some old videos by Foxy from the hit game FNAF at Freddy. Okay, seriously though, two of the most popular videos by commentator NaiTaiDai are his videos on Zaid Magenta, formerly known as Misanthropony, who covered Nostalgia Critic's videos on Teen Titans vs Teen Titans Go, and Sailor Moon. I picked these videos out specifically because, though I remember liking them when they were first released, they are not as good as I remember.
I can't believe I'm still talking about this bullshit. So in a move that really shouldn't surprise anyone at this point, Doug Walker, better known as the Nostalgia Critic, talked about Teen Titans Go in an old versus new episode. And if you think I'm gonna make a 40-minute review of this one like I did with Deadpool 2, don't. There's really no way that I can talk about this episode for 40 minutes because there's really nothing worth going into detail on.
You lie! If there was nothing to talk about in response to Doug's video, yours wouldn't exist and I wouldn't be here. I've watched your video twice, Map, and can say with absolute certainty that while you do have a lot to say, it's mostly you repeating yourself.
That's kind of preemptive, given how we haven't seen Zaid repeat themselves yet. Probably would have been a lot better to say this after Zaid repeated themselves. But what I really have a problem with is you misrepresenting Zaid's point. They said there was nothing worth going into detail on, not that there was nothing to say. These are two different statements entirely.
The comedy was about as bland and stale as you'd expect it to be, and the analysis that Doug offers on the topic is really bare bones. It's not nearly as bad as a lot of other episodes of the show, but it's still a pretty good example of how horribly the show's style has regressed this year.
Bare bones. Even though Doug talks about the history of the Teen Titans cartoon, how it sort of came back in a chibi art style for a short-lived TV series, the announcement for Teen Titans Go, and the backlash that little incarnation has gotten. What about how he explained how both shows are complete opposites? The original cartoon was full of drama, action, and comedy with well-developed characters, while the other was just a straight comedy with flat, interchangeable characters who will readily screw over anyone and everyone as long as they get what they want.
Okay, but how does that disprove how Zaid thinks that the analysis is bare bones? Since you pretty much just go over Doug's talking points. If Zaid thought that the talking points were bare bones the first time, then what would change when you essentially just reiterate them briefly? Especially when we haven't even listened to Zaid's explanation for the video being bare bones yet, so this is yet again you jumping the gun with being preemptive. Even then, just because Doug said all these things, that doesn't suddenly mean that his criticisms can't be seen as bare bones.
As for the comedy, the video literally ends with Doug ranting about how he's disappointed that TTG isn't the abomination upon animation that he's been hearing, and demanding the powers that be to show him something truly awful. The next shot is of Doug with a look of absolute horror on his face, and dried blood running down from his eyes. Maybe it's my subjective opinion, but that was pretty clever in terms of comedy. You know Doug is going to regret the challenge. You just don't know how he's going to be made to regret the challenge.
Really? Because I thought that the joke was incredibly predictable, with Doug essentially giving the punchline away before it even happened. It's very similar to Butch Hartman's "and then the opposite happens" brand of humor. Now, of course, that's just my opinion, but that's the thing. It's an opinion. You want to prove why Zaid's video sucks, and yet you're using your own opinion to do so. That is not how it works, since even if you have a differing opinion, Zaid can still disagree regardless. I know you acknowledge that this was all your opinion, but maybe that's a sign that you should have cut this point from the video, because this is not an argument.
There's actually other episodes besides this one that are much more fitting for a lengthy deconstruction, including one in particular that I hope to talk about in the future, but for now I want to keep things simple and make a discussion on one single sentence that Doug used during the episode.
But it's still kind of fascinating the hate Teen Titans Go gets. Don't get me wrong, I can see why some people don't like the show, and I myself have made some Teen Titan Go jokes before. But the outrage some fans have over it does make me wonder if it's not only worth it, but possibly fueling it. I always see people post how bad the show is and the latest atrocity that happened in the latest episode, but if you don't like it, why are you watching it? How do you know about these atrocities?
The if you don't like it, don't watch it argument is pretty well known in the YouTube comment section these days. It's mostly used when someone is talking shit about a movie or a TV show and another person is questioning why they're even making a video about it if they don't like it.
Hey Foxy, the video's been playing out for a bit now, and you haven't really said anything.
Finding a plethora of people telling her, well, if you don't like Doug's shitty, cringe-inducing sorry excuse for our web series, then do something else and don't spend time talking about all the reasons it's a terrible show. It's an argument that's used for a lot of things actually, and I guess it's done because people can be baffled as to why someone is spending time on something they're not a fan of. And I suppose it's understandable to an extent. I mean, I'm pretty curious as to why people are still talking shit about bronies even though it's 2018, and still spending time insulting and harassing bronies this late into the game is probably something you wouldn't be doing if you had nothing else to do with your meaningless existence.
Map, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Oh, thank God he finally remembered he was part of the video. Next time, when the context drags out for over a minute, learn to speed it up.
There are a few reasons why anti-bronies exist.
So you played all of that footage, which dragged out for over a minute, just to address a small side tangent, and not the main point itself.
They don't like how some bronies just talk about the show in a conversation that has absolutely nothing to do with the show. They don't like how the fandom has infected other franchises, like Star Wars or Team Fortress 2.
But that would only apply to a small minority of fans and not the majority. Plus, Zaid was talking about their experience with anti-bronies. It's almost like it's reasonable to not want to be called slurs or something.
Some bronies can be obnoxiously defensive about their fandom, while other times it's just people trying to intentionally piss off bronies.
Too bad none of this applies to Zaid's points, since he was talking about people harassing and insulting them, not whatever the heck you're going on about. Even then, just because anti-bronies exist, that doesn't mean that Zaid has to agree with it. He can merely not like it.
But regardless, I'm here to tell you that the don't like it, don't watch it argument is a bad argument to make. And I'm gonna go over several reasons why. First off, have you ever noticed why people even make the argument in the first place? As I said earlier, people tend to use the argument when someone speaks negatively about something, particularly something that they happen to like. With that in mind, it's not that someone is spending time talking about something they don't like, it's that they don't like that someone is spending time talking negatively about something that they like.
Believe it or not, Map, there are times where the argument don't like, don't watch is valid. For example, when Thundercats Roar was announced, waves of people would just rant about how this was a bastardization of an old cartoon classic, and Thundercats Roar hasn't even come out yet. People were just going by what they saw in the advertisement. To those people, I would say, if you don't think you're going to like the show, you don't have to watch it. Literally, no one is forcing you. There's also the fact that if someone bashes on something long enough and never gives any insight as to why they hate it, then what the person is saying is bound to become repetitive and tiresome.
But that's only a specific instance of the don't like, don't watch argument being used. And it would not apply to how Nostalgia Critic uses it, given how Doug is using it in regards to Teen Titans Go, a show that already exists and people already know they don't like, versus your example of Thundercats Roar, which was a show that did not exist at the time of this video. That apple is not an orange, Foxy. This is a false equivalence.
When someone says if you don't like it then don't watch it, what they really mean is if you don't like it, I don't want you criticizing it. It's like they feel completely ashamed or self-conscious that someone is putting time into explaining the flaws of a given work. And it's almost always used when the thing receiving criticism is something they happen to like. For example, when it comes to my Nostalgia Critic videos, I seem to be having people using this exact same defense ad nauseum, to the point where I wonder if they actually took the time to listen to my arguments and didn't just see the title and immediately jump to conclusions. They don't seem to like that someone is explaining the flaws of the Nostalgia Critic, so they actively try to discourage and silence criticism by telling the people making the video to not do exactly that.
Well, we have Solar Fenrir who did our commentary on your rant on Doug's Norm of the North review.
Which does not apply to what Zaid was talking about, since he was referring to comments, not commentaries.
As well as Buck Reviewer who did a 26-minute response to it. So yes, I'd say that there are people who've taken the time to watch your videos on Doug.
But Zaid never denied that people watched his videos on Doug. They are merely explaining all of the times where people use the don't like, don't watch argument against him, and why it annoys him to no end. Plus, they were referring to how certain people in the comments didn't seem like they watched the video. They never said that none of his detractors watched the video. So overall, this completely misses the point of what the pony is saying.
I also feel people say this to you because it generally feels like you hate Doug as a person and look for any excuse to crap all over him and his content.
Even though he was responding to Nostalgia Critic as a series, as in not Doug as a person. And even then, I don't know why the motivations behind what they said matters, when what they said was still, in Zaid's mind, poor argumentation regardless, so overall this changes nothing. Plus, you don't actually explain how he dislikes Doug as a person.
Yeah, baby Huggy Wuggy and Blue.
With more and more people coming out with videos explaining the problems with the Nostalgia Critic, it feels like a last-ditch effort by Doug himself to forget about his own problems and getting other people to forget about them too.
Wait a minute! That video. Matt, there's a lovely little commentary group called Acronym that did a try-op on Shinobi's video on Doug. Here, let me share their final thoughts on the video with you.
Actually, no, let's not do that, because these final thoughts go on for over 3 minutes, and you have no reason to play out a clip that is this long. This is a Foxy the Pirate video, not a Shomer commentary, and you cannot make me think that it is a Shomer commentary.
Shinobi's video was full of personal bias and attempted to use the channel awesome drama to discredit Doug at every possible turn Shinobi could make.
Okay, this is something that I noticed while editing, but did you really just summarize Shinobi's video, giving you even less of a reason to play out the final thoughts? Since the final thoughts are also a summary of the video and its faults, are you kidding me?
And it was torn apart by people that could tell that Shinobi's video was incredibly flawed. If that video is really the horse you're backing out of the gate, you're a very poor gambling man.
Man, it was so worth it for you to play out so much just to tell Zaid that their tastes are trash. This commentary would have been so much worse without such insight. Seriously though, the fact that Zaid used this video as an example is such a minor part of the video. Even then, what if Zaid didn't think that the video was that bad? He can't really be wrong for having bad tastes.
But let's say you're someone who's using the don't like it, don't watch it defense as a person who's not even a fan of the topic being discussed. You could be someone who doesn't like Steven Universe but still use the argument on someone who's making a video on why they don't like Steven Universe.
Why won't this?
And now I know where Shadowruff got its sense of humor.
Ever since Lee Orchard put out her video on Steven Universe, all anyone on Twitter has been talking about are all the negative criticisms she's had towards the show. And, oh yeah, how did he call the show creator, Rebecca Sugar, a Nazi sympathizer and apologist? TLDR, there are multiple reasons to dislike Lily's video.
Are you trying to imply that Zaid is saying that there are no reasons to dislike it? I mean, for one thing, unlike the other videos he showed earlier, Zaid never gave Lily's video a like, and they did not subscribe to her channel. But for another thing, this is literally just Zaid using Lily's video as an example of not liking a video criticizing Steven Universe, while still not liking Steven Universe. He didn't say anything about Lily's video being good. So you bringing up how it's bad doesn't matter, especially when this is just an example for a point that hasn't even been completed yet. So what was the purpose behind this besides just being a waste of my time? So the video picks up after that, but I'm not done yet because we have Foxy's other video on Zaid to go through to see if this one's any better. Let's watch it because I hate myself. This one is covering Doug's review of Sailor Moon, something that I know nothing about. Oh joy.
I'd say it's been a while since we talked about this topic, hasn't it? It still feels like yesterday that Alison Pregler and the rest of the former Channel Awesome staff helped to expose Mike Machad, Brad Jones, and the Walker brothers for the scum that they are. I guess Larry Bundy Jr. really is the last man standing. I know it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it really has been over a year since the whole Change the Channel movement. But I think the fact that it's still being talked about really resonates the impact that it made.
Okay, this has nothing to do with Doug's video. You're just bringing it up in the hopes of making hashtag Change the Channel relevant again.
Or maybe Zaid was just bringing it up to set up his review and serve as an introduction. The rest of the point is fine, I guess, hence why I cut it out. But you're not Zaid, so you wouldn't know his intentions for bringing all this up. So you cannot say why he brought this up because you wouldn't know why. You would only have a guess. Actually, let's watch Zaid's original video to see if Foxy caught anything out.
You see, it doesn't actually matter how long ago the movement was. The reason why it was done in the first place is still the fact of the matter. The company is still being run by morally reprehensible people who don't deserve their audience. They showed no remorse, regret, or contrition for the crimes they committed, and just did a bunch of finger-pointing and victim-blaming while being coddled by whatever idiots are still supporting them after that utter disaster. So as long as they continue to be absolute scumbags about years of abuse and lies while putting out shitty content, they're entitled to whatever criticism they receive.
Oh look, cut context that explains why Zaid brought up old stuff, making your point about don't bring up the old stuff completely pointless. I mean, you can still disagree with him bringing up old stuff, and maybe his reasons weren't good, but it is reasoning beyond let's revive dead drama.
Alright folks, show what you got. Now let's get ready to jot down my latest formula.
You got it?
Yes, and it's going to make us millions.
Well, that's wonderful. Let's hear it.
14-year-old girl acts stupid, uses magical powers to look slutty and stupid, talking cat tells her how to fight crime because she's so stupid, surrounds herself with smarter girls that make her look even more stupid.
So according to Doug, Sailor Moon is just a bunch of 14-year-old girls using magic powers while looking slutty, which is absolutely nothing like what the show actually is. And aside from this just being a horrible summary of the show, this opening sketch acts as a frame for the comedy of the rest of the episode.
Jokes. Have you heard of them?
I mean, given how he just said that the opening sketch is a good frame of the comedy, I'd say yes, Zaid has heard of jokes.
Plus, the scientist was just talking about Serena, who, in both dubs of the show, is kind of portrayed as a moron when not in her Sailor Moon persona. Keep in mind, Doug was reviewing the English dub of the show, and it really didn't seem to help that that dub wanted to emphasize what a dummy Serena was a good percent of the time. It was even a running gag about how much of an airhead Serena was, even her boyfriend commenting on it.
Wait, so you're going to say it's just a joke, brah, in retaliation, but you're also going to explain how it's not just a joke, and there is truth behind it. Foxy, those hooves must hurt from the bullet you just put in them.
Only 40 seconds in, we already come across a huge red flag.
I guess the only downside is the obvious American additions, like this pointless Star Wars style scroll. Yeah, because that's what girls watching this show are really into. Star Wars! They go so hand in hand, I'm surprised Lucas didn't release a more feminine version with Serena doing Darth Vader.
Oh, fuck you, Doug. Fuck you. This is the kind of shit I expect to see from Kathleen Kennedy. He is seriously jumping to the conclusion that Star Wars is not something that can be enjoyed by girls. Why? Because there's only one primary female character in the original trilogy? I don't care how you slice it, that's straight up sexist. How the hell did he even come to this conclusion?
Again, it was a joke. You don't have to find it funny, but it was a joke.
I know it seems like I'm making a big deal out of the first joke of this review, but it's a gateway to a huge problem with this episode.
Hey, Foxy, don't look now, but I think Zaid knew that it was just a joke. This is the second time in the video you have written off something as just a joke, while ignoring the rest of the context, and it's just as painful as it was the first time.
Plus, when the English dub aired in 1995, it's clear that the team that aired this wanted to aim it at little girls, who most likely would have been drawn to the bright colors and slice-of-life situations, more than the action scenes where they fight monsters and villains.
Okay, but what does that prove? Of course Sailor Moon was aimed towards girls. Like, given how Zaid responds to Doug, it was clear to me that he thinks girls can enjoy action-based shows. So to say that girls would be drawn to bright colors and slice-of-life situations would just be a reiteration of what Zaid doesn't agree with. Especially when you saying that they wouldn't be drawn to the fighting and stuff just reinforces female stereotypes, as in the ones that he didn't agree with, since you're generalizing why girls were drawn to the series. I don't know, man. I thought the main draw of Sailor Moon to young girls would be the use of female protagonists, but maybe that's just me.
If you were to look at the commentary and behind the scenes of several episodes, like the Real Thoughts and First Viewing videos, a lot of the jokes that Doug puts into the final cut of a Nostalgia Critic episode are entirely based on his initial viewings of the thing in question.
And does him stating his opinion on a show or movie negatively affect the enjoyment people have towards them? Did people stop enjoying or watching Sailor Moon simply because of Doug Walker?
Am I watching Foxy the Pirate or Ralph Dibny? Because that's a far reach. All Zaid said was that Doug writes many of his points based on his first viewing. That has nothing to do with how the Nostalgia Critic affects the opinions of his audience. Almost as if Zaid didn't say anything about Doug affecting the opinions of others. Stop burning that straw man, Foxy. It didn't do anything to you.
I know it seems like I'm making a big deal out of the first joke of this review, but it's a gateway to a huge problem with this episode. It is absurdly misogynistic.
How?
Whoa, it's almost like Zaid was going to explain why it was sexist, but you cut him off and took him out of context. You cannot question a point that has an explanation behind it. That's just stupid.
Because you made an offhand comment about the text scroll being like something you'd see out of Star Wars, I know what you're doing here, Map, and you're bad at it. I showed your video to several women, and they told me that this point was both infuriating and stupid.
Ah yes, just because Milantar and Toro Fox disagreed with the point, that automatically means it was wrong. What even is this point? This is not an argument. For one thing, you don't actually explain why it's stupid beyond, my friends think it's stupid. You're essentially telling Zaid they're wrong, not because their point is bad, which I do agree with by the way, since the point is pretty dang bad, but because someone told you that they're wrong. Well, just because somebody tells you something, that doesn't automatically make it right. This completely ignores how some women may not recognize sexist behavior. And that's putting aside how women can still be sexist towards other women. Ever seen a classical Abby video? And then the rest of the video is mainly okay points. And yeah, this video is not as good as I remembered, but honestly, I have already said everything I wanted to say, so I can sign out now. Good night, gamers!